Learn from local and national guest speakers, providing resources and knowledge for the everyday business owner. Women Empowerment Talk Radio, weekly on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Happy Hump Day. We're excited that you decided to join us for the party. Fresh Juice is live Wednesday night, 9 to 11 p.m. Pacific time on Seattle's Rainier Avenue Radio with the Juice Bank, including me, Superstar TK, Hindsight Patron, and D-Money. We're going to chop it up with some cool people, play some really dope new hip-hop and R&B music, some games, and maybe even a live performance. Lock us in right now on Fresh Juice YouTube page at youtube.com/@Fresh Juice Media, or subscribe to us on Spotify or Apple Music. Fresh Juice exclusive.
We must all remain committed to slow the spread of coronavirus, taking care of ourselves and not putting others in harm's way, especially those already at high risk of getting seriously ill, including people over 65 or those with underlying medical conditions. If you must be out, avoid crowded areas, stay 6 feet or 2 arm lengths away from others, and wear a face covering. Wash hands frequently with soap and water for 20 seconds, especially after being in public spaces. Avoid touching your face, cough or sneeze in a tissue, then throw it away. Disinfect frequently touched objects. And if you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. Slowing coronavirus means taking care of ourselves while also protecting others. Even if you're not at high risk, these steps should be taken to help slow the spread of coronavirus. We are all in this together.
Rainier Avenue Radio, your community radio station will provide you with more information. Rainier Avenue Radio.
Afternoon, and we're live opportunity by world. Certainly on Juan on Rainier, obviously WIAA Primetime. We do our show regularly with Nick Hoffman at the first event last week with talking about high school sports. That was a very interesting episode, Daniel, and you can hear that usually every other Tuesday on your community radio. We delve into the high school sports and athletics and just really come up with the different ways that the community can see sports as it is an educational opportunity and for people to participate on a variety of different levels. But this is the regular show that we do. We do a show, and I bring in local luminaries. And today we have one of the most influential people, in my opinion, in the history of Seattle politics. I don't think that is a small statement at all. We have former District 2 City Council member. She said that I can call her Kshama, but I'm going to call her Councilmember Sawant. She made the decision last spring that she will be running for the congressional seat currently occupied by Adam Smith, and I believe that is in the 9th Congressional District here in Washington State. Representative Kshama Sawant, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
It's so good to see you. My favorite football, I follow sports too much. I grew up here, and I follow and played sports and follow sports way too much. But Pete Carroll, who I always found was interesting as head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, he was let go of his job, or however that was announced a couple of years ago. He decided to take a year off. And in the conversation when he took the job with the Oakland Raiders now, he said that, geez, I took a year and I really kind of found myself again, and he went to different things. You have now been out of office, out of your Seattle City Council office. You decided to step down a couple of years now. Tell us what you've been up to and what type of self-development you've been doing, and what do people like you do when they take a little bit of time off?
I don't know if I got a lot of time off per se. I do love to cook a lot. I cook every day, and that is one of my release, one of my calming peace, giving me peace of mind kind of activities. But for the most part, what we have done is build Worker Strike Back. In 2023, in the early part of the year, when I announced that I wouldn't be running for re-election that year, I had already won 4 elections, including an attempted recall against me. And what I announced at that time was that I was not going to be running for re-election, but we were going to be launching Worker Strike Back, a nationwide organization of social and economic justice activists. And so that's what we've done. We've been building Worker Strike Back. In fact, Worker Strike Back was instrumental last year in defeating the Seattle City Council in their attempted undermining of our minimum wage victory, which was unfortunately brought forward by Councilmember Joy Hollingsworth. And this year, they tried to undermine renters' rights by trying to water down ethics rules. We defeated them on that as well. And in fact, the Seattle Times, which is not my fan, because it represents the Chamber of Commerce and I am a revolutionary socialist, but the Seattle Times was forced to acknowledge that the scorecard was the Kshama Sawant to Seattle City Council nil, because we defeated them on both those attempts to undermine renters' rights and workers' rights. And so that's what Workers' Strike Back has been up to. And of course, now we're running for Congress.
Let me take a step back, and then we'll take a step back into that. If you were to invite me to your place to have something to eat, if you were going to cook for me, what would a meal prepared by Kshama Sawant be?
It would probably be Indian food, or it would be Mediterranean food, Middle Eastern food.
Yes, I could deal with that.
Yeah.
Give me a couple dishes you like.
So it would one dish that I might make for you would be chickpeas, boiled at home, made from scratch, from dried chickpeas, dried and soaked and cooked chickpeas, with the spices, and the seasonings would include black mustard seeds, cumin seeds, or something called hing, which is asafoetida, which is a flavor-inducing ingredient in Indian food. But also, because it's the end of summer, I would probably want to use cucumbers. That we grow cucumbers in our garden, so some cucumbers and cilantro, and maybe some onions.
Daniel,
and some coconut.
Daniel, I picked the wrong week to water fast. So if I start eating your stuff over there, watch me. That sounds fantastic. I would be completely into that. Okay, let's go. Let's step back into this. So you decide you're stepping down from the Seattle City Council, a role that you had for 12 years.
10 years.
10 years. First of all, how difficult was it for you to make the transition back to regular citizen? And second of all, I mean, when you're seeing stuff like that, how difficult is it for you? I mean, do you think to yourself, geez, maybe some other people should be stepping up and doing this? Or do you say, something, I'm in a position, I may not be elected, and I may not, be able to walk in the way I used to, but I can still support the situation. What goes through your mindset?
Well, it's fundamentally different for me than basically any other politician, whether it's on the Democratic or Republican Party, because I'm an independent socialist. And for us, the approach for my socialist organization, we are called Revolutionary Workers, but we're also members of Workers' Strike Back. For us, it's never, including for me, it's never been that it's my career. I mean, my example, our example, and I use the pronouns we and our deliberately because I want to emphasize the movement building aspect. Our campaigns from the very beginning, my first campaign in 2013 itself was part of a movement building strategy for us. For us, the question is never, Kshama Sawant woke up one day and she decided to run for office for her own career or for her own aggrandizement. It is never like that for us. It's always, what are the needs of the working class movements today? And what are the avenues, concretely, what are the avenues today that will allow us as revolutionary socialist leadership to bring about the biggest possible breakthroughs, victories for the working class? And even if it's not, we're not going to win every fight. So even if it's not victory, how can we move forward consciousness of the working class in the best possible way? How can we get the biggest breakthroughs possible? So that's the idea by which we have always decided, okay, let's run an election campaign. And so for me, it was never about, it was never sort of any kind of a personal transition from being in elected office or not being in elected office, because we're still doing the same thing. We're still fighting the fight for the working class. We're still building movements. And then, like I said, even out of the city council, we still won against the city council, the current city council, in their attempts to undermine workers' rights and renters' rights. We did that without me being on the dais. And so we have shown that it's possible to also win victories outside of it. But we've also shown, and this is the most shining example, we've shown that if we can have even one elected office of the kind that we had through my office, you can move mountains. The Seattle Times themselves, again, our enemies sometimes give us the best compliments. They said that we came out of nowhere and commandeered the city's political agenda and 15, the $15 minimum wage, which we won through my office, that was happening at lightning speed. That is what you can achieve if you have an elected office that is not about a person's career, but about building the movement and winning victories for working people.
She is Councilmember Kshama Sawant. She is a cook that, man, I'm ready to eat right now. We're going to discuss that. This book is by Jonathan Rosenblum. It's called "We Are Coming for You and Your Rotten System." Jonathan and I did an interview a couple of weeks ago, and I believe this is you right there on the front of this book. It's a silhouette of you.
Probably,
could be.
I'm not sure, but it could be me. Yeah.
And I enjoyed reading the book. Jonathan was able to get me a copy, an advanced copy, and which we discussed when he was on the show. And if you love politics, I love this stuff, and I love kind of going into the history of it. Take a look. You can buy it where fine books are sold, and it's a really, really good read. It's a very, very fast read, but for those of us political types, you'll go through this and some great memories and some situations that occurred during the Sawant years. Let's talk. You said something very interesting before we were coming on, and I told you I've always been fascinated with you. There's a part of you, and I told Jonathan the same thing. You guys speak very straight. There is no waffling positions with you. I know when I've run for public office, you listen to the questions up in the interview panels and in the public. I hate to call them, they're forums. They're not debates. They're public forums, and you hear the question, and in your mind, you're trying to say it so you can walk out of there, and people will like you. I grew up here in Seattle. My father was a union organizer at Boeing. I had a really good, and when you're young, you want to change the world, and elected officials are a way to do that. But it was very, very interesting how you said that the way that the socialist movement looked at it, it's not picking a candidate. Candidate says, I want to run for office. You sit down, you guys examine the issues, and then you pick the candidate. Tell us a little bit about that and how that sort of galvanized your role when you were running as a socialist.
Yeah, that's actually a very important part of the story, and I think Jonathan goes into it a little bit in that book, and I agree with you. That book is extremely worth reading because it's about a unique effort that was done. The approach we used, the fighting strategy we used on the Seattle City Council, and the victories we won, tragically for the working class, are unparalleled in our times. We need much more of that. But the basis of everything we did was exactly what you were describing just now, which is when we launched our campaign in 2013. Remember, that was in the wake of the Occupy movement. I mean, some of your viewers are probably too young to remember.
They could be.
Yeah, Occupy movement, but many will probably
like Daniel.
Yeah, will remember. But at least from reading it, you would know that. Reading about it, you would know the Occupy movement broke a silence of many decades of neoliberal attacks on the working class. And for the first time in a whole generation, it put forward the language of class, meaning the 99% versus the 1%. Remember, it was a lot of anger against Barack Obama's regime and the Democrats and Republicans both, who had bailed out the big banks, including my opponent, Adam Smith. They voted to bail out the big banks. They left millions of homeowners and working class people, renters, in the lurch. So many people lost their jobs, lost their homes. I mean, it was just economic devastation for the working class, while the billionaires who caused the crisis themselves, the Great Recession, they themselves were, they more than made up for their losses, and they actually got much more than what they had before, and now they are richer than before. So in 2013, it was, the question for us was, how do we take that risen consciousness? The consciousness had risen among the working class. There was an understanding and anger against capitalism and the injustices under it. And how do we harness that anger that is, just dissipated in society, but how can we harness that to actually win something concrete for the working class? And during the autumn of 2012, there was a whole momentum around $15 an hour. It wasn't actually so much in Seattle. It was started in New York City. I don't know if you remember, but fast food workers, just before Thanksgiving of 2012, fast food workers walked out with the demand of 15 and a union. And we could tell, my fellow socialists and I, we could tell that it was in the air. There was real support for a $15 an hour minimum wage. So when we talked about, okay, how can we build a campaign for 15, we recognized, unfortunately, again, for the working class, that most of the labor leadership was not going to be was not going to support this unless there was a lot of pressure on them. And this was the avenue for us to launch an election campaign with the banner of 15 and just saying 15 on the top, really making that prominent. I don't know if you remember one, but my yard signs also said 15. In fact, I remember a lot of Democratic operatives saying, I've never seen a yard sign with a demand on it. It's always just a person's name. So we really threw out the conventional rule book. We did things that nobody had ever seen before. Having $15 an hour emblazoned on the yard signs, that was never done before. So it was that kind of approach. So we decided an election campaign would be the best vehicle tactically and strategically to build support for 15. And also that was a democratic decision, and also was a democratic decision was who the candidate should be. So I would say, unfortunately for me, the democratic decision was that I should be the candidate. And so here we are.
We're gonna go back to the whole conversation in a second, but I told you I'm gonna ask you some questions. I know you're sometimes a little uncomfortable about speaking about yourself, but I'm gonna lob some softballs up to you so you can hit them. Okay. I just want to know a little bit more about your background. Tell us. You came to the United States at an early age. What was like the transition? Can you recall the transition from coming from India to the United States and what that was like as you started school and how was that transition for you?
Yeah, I'm happy to share that, because I think a lot of what I say will also resonate with many of your listeners, especially the young people, which is that I grew up in India as somebody who, from a very early age, from the time I could put thoughts together, being extremely upset and bothered by the poverty that I saw around me. But it wasn't just a moral concern, which of course it was, but it wasn't just that. It was a scientific quest for understanding. It was a logical question I had in my mind, which is, how is it that in a world that is, in a human society that is capable of so much innovation, technology, wealth creation, so much wealth in society, how is it that there is an ocean of poverty and misery all around us? So that question plagued my thinking throughout, and I didn't know what to do about it, because my family was very apolitical. We were mostly focused on academic achievements. My family is full of engineers, and my favorite subject was mathematics. It was all that I was steeped in. So while I was going through mathematics and engineering school, all throughout my life as a software engineer, my initial 2 years that I worked out after college as a software engineer, throughout that time, that question was always in my mind. And then when I came to the US, it was quite an awakening, in the sense that when I was on my way to the US, I thought, surely in the richest country in the world, they would have solved all the problems that I saw in India. But no, I came to the United States, where I saw poverty, misery, homelessness, people not being able to have good quality education, good quality healthcare, racism, sexism, all of that. So that actually helped me understand that this is not some localized problem of India or some other nation. This is about the capitalist system, the global capitalist system. There's something about the system that forces inequality and poverty on the masses of people, while a few people at the top become rich. So it's that understanding that set me off on a quest for something much more scientifically evolved. And that's how it's just a quirk of fate that I came all the way to the Pacific Northwest and found other socialists who explained to me about the Marxist ideas of science, which were already established. And then I suddenly felt, oh, okay, I found my political home here. And so since then, I've never looked back. And I think since then, millions of young people, actually for them, socialism is no longer a dirty word. Capitalism is the dirty word. People understand that this system is not working for us and we need an alternative.
I think what you say is true. I think that when I was young and when I was in school, and maybe it was because of the tension that we had with the Soviet Union, capitalism, socialism was a very, and really the way it was taught. And of course, I went to two Catholic schools here in the area, and then went to a Catholic high school. But socialism and capitalism were really taught very differently, and was something that we never really aspired to. Because then, when you're educated, you look at that from perspective, and you see that this is a capitalist country, the environment I'm in. But I think you're right. I think that in recent history, certainly, and I say in the last 10 to 15 years, there's been a rise not only in the interest of socialism, but the rise also that a lot of people are out and running as socialists. I give you part of that here locally, but like you said, this is national.
It is. In fact, it's international. And in fact, you can see really important dimensions, especially at the time when Trump and the right-wing Republicans are on such a rampage, carrying out horrific attacks. But to understand where working class people are and how even people who see themselves as Trump supporters, many of them can be won over to working class politics. I just wanted to give you a concrete example. In the 2016 Democratic primaries, Bernie Sanders won every county of the state of Virginia, all 55 counties of the state of West Virginia. But then the Democratic establishment pulled out all the stops to throw Bernie Sanders out, and they anointed Hillary Clinton as their candidate. And after that, of course, Trump won, which any of us would have predicted, because Hillary Clinton was hated as a clearly a corporate shill. But then what happened in the general election in 2016 was that Trump carried every one of those counties that Bernie had won before. In other words, what it means is that even though we might have differences on other issues, a real working class unity is possible in the United States today, because there is widespread anger. I mean, first of all, there's already widespread anger against the genocide in Gaza. Even among the Republicans, 24%, only 24% of Republican voters aged 18 to 34 support Israel at this point. This is mind-blowing. This is how much support there is for the Palestinian cause and for an end to war and genocide. But if you look at working class issues domestically, the support is even greater. So if you look at the support for a higher minimum wage, for living wages, for unions, I mean, unions have never been this popular as they are now. Nearly 70% of America says they support unions. If you look at the support for universal health care, for publicly funded schools, for taxes on Wall Street, practically every progressive issue across the spectrum, and you have majority support, including on issues which you would think as wedge issues. If you look at the support for abortion rights, the support for LGBTQ rights, actually it is higher than ever before. And it should be noted that some of the states like Nevada and Arizona that went for Trump in the last election, just a few months ago, they actually also voted for ballot initiatives supporting abortion rights, and by bigger majorities than they supported Trump. So I would say that what's missing right now is not that the majority of the working class is not ready to fight back. It's that we don't have the leadership on offer. And that is why it's important what we did on the city council, and also the vision we have for the US Congress.
You bring up Donald Trump, and you bring up the two presidencies, 2016 and 2024. And it's such an interesting proposition to see his name on the ballot, and the way that he got there, and what has transpired through our electoral process that Donald Trump can be elected twice. What in your mind, and what do the socialists look at? What has created this success? This has been a failure of Democratic Party ways of trying to approach the at least I think they got it right with Biden, but that didn't last long. Tell me what has been the thing that has stemmed Donald Trump's ability to win two elections?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Right? Trump left his first presidency as the most unpopular president in modern US history. How does this guy get elected again if he's that unpopular? It can only mean mathematically that the other side is even less popular. And that's what ended up happening, actually. Obviously, let's talk about Biden in a second, but obviously what happened in the actual election was you had Donald Trump and Kamala Harris as the two options. And Kamala Harris refused to present absolutely anything in favor of the anti-war movement or the mass of the working class that was angry about the cost of living crisis. So that election was hers to lose, and she lost. And it's not just about her, but it's about the Democratic Party as a whole. And that is why if you look at the numbers today, they're very evident. You don't have to take my word for it as a socialist. Statistics are available. These are statistical polls that have been done. So one of those is indicating that Trump is actually quite unpopular. So it's not like Trump has major support. I mean, he obviously has his base, but on the whole, his popularity ratings have plummeted quite a bit. And then The Republicans in Congress are even less popular than Trump. But you know who is less popular than Trump or the Republicans? It's the Democratic Party. Congressional Democrats are at an all-time low of approval rating. They have the lowest approval rating today that they've had in 35 years.
Why is that?
Because they have completely betrayed working class people, and it's also about the genocide. It's about both things. So just to give you another statistic, 20 million people who voted for Biden in 2020 refused to vote at all last year. It's not that they voted for Trump, they refused to vote at all. Why? Because they're angry about the genocide and they're angry about the cost of living crisis. And these are all statistically documented facts. So the crisis that the Democratic Party is facing is very evident. It's not like it's a mystery. Here's the deal though. The reason the Democratic Party still remain in such low approval ratings, even though it's plainly visible what they need to do, is to end the genocide. What they need to do is to fight to end U.S. military funding for the Israeli state. There's no mystery about it. They need to pass universal healthcare. They need to fight for something. They need to fight for goddamn something. It's not a mystery. The reason they don't do it is not because they lack the IQ for it or they're just inept or incompetent. There is no such thing. The reason the Democrats have betrayed the working class is because they also represent the interests of billionaires and Wall Street and the warmongering industry. That is the problem. That is the problem that working class people face, that you have two parties, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And obviously the Republican Party is much more overtly right-wing, much more overtly anti-worker, anti-union. But the Democratic Party is all those things, except with a veneer of a bit of progressivism. But in fact, you saw Biden and the Democrats break the railroad workers' strike. So they have been plenty anti-union themselves. Barack Obama till today remains the deporter in chief, meaning he has deported more people than any other presidency put together, including Trump's. So all of this is an example of what Noam Chomsky has often said, which is that the best way for the capitalist class, for capitalism to keep control over millions of people and globally billions, is to give them an illusion of debate. So the difference between the Democratic and Republican Party is an illusion of debate, because if you look at the actual policy making, whether it is about war and genocide, the weapons industry, it's about ICE and attacks on the immigrant community, it's about attacks on working class people, skyrocketing rents, the slashing and savage cuts of Medicare, Medicaid, public school funding, all of this is absolutely a bipartisan agenda for the Democrats and Republicans. That is why working class people need a new party of our own, rooted in independent movements. And that is exactly why I have always been an independent, and I'm now running as an independent for Congress.
1 minute. You have 1 minute. It's the only time I want to put a 1 minute on you, because we're going to go to break, but then we'll come back if you want to explain more. Let me ask you this. Can an independent socialist go back to Washington, D.C. and accomplish anything against this structure that exists?
First of all, a revolutionary socialist has never been elected to the US Congress. So if we are able to win, which we have a real chance to win, then it will be nothing short of a political earthquake. And the approach we can and will use in the US Congress will be similar, strategically similar to what we did on the city council, where with one elected position, we were able to turn the political agenda upside down in the city. That is the approach we need in Congress as well. And it can be done. How? Because I won't be alone, because I will be mobilizing and organizing tens of millions of working class people. And I won't be alone in that effort as well, either, because there will be others who will stand with us. That is how change happens. She
is Kshama Sawant. She is the former Seattle City Council member, and I am blown away just sitting here listening to her. We've all known for years that she is an iconic leader in this community, and certainly she is now standing up and running for the U.S. congressional seat in the U.S. Congressional District 9 seat, and she will be doing that next year. When we come back, we're going to ask her a little bit about the local elections, a little bit more about herself on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Your community radio station will provide you with more information. Rainier Avenue Radio.
Are your kids eligible for or enrolled in Apple Health Medicaid insurance? Bring them to a free dental clinic in Skyway this fall. Public Health Seattle and King County is hosting free dental clinics for kids 12 and under at the Skyway Resource Center one Saturday per month, now until December. Visit kingcounty.gov/ABCD for more information. Again, that's kingcounty.gov/ABCD for free dental clinics for kids.
Turn up your radio wherever you at. We about to bring it. Street Beat with Tony B.
Tony B will give you a chance to tackle local, national, and international issues that affect your community.
Street Beat. Street Beat. Tony.
1, 2, get down. What's up, big and little homies? This is Masvita Maraire, host of Seattle Sports Weekly on Rainier Avenue Radio.world, your one-stop shop for Seattle sports. We cover preps, we cover college, we cover pro, we cover it all. Huskies, Mariners, Seahawks, Garfield, South, Roosevelt, Metro, King County. This is where you want to listen to for all the sports that's happening in Seattle. Seattle Sports Weekly on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Sediment cleanup of the lower Duwamish River has begun. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the members of the lower Duwamish Waterway Group, which includes King County, the City of Seattle, and Boeing, have begun sediment cleanup of the lower Duwamish Waterfall Superfund site. This important environmental project will address sediment pollution and help restore the health of the Duwamish River. Starting on the waterway's upper reach, construction activities extend from the south 102nd Street Bridge down straight to the Duwamish Waterway Park. Over the next 3 years, in-water activities will occur from October to February, ending in February 2027. Visit ldwg.org to learn about the upper reach cleanup and sign up for email updates.
You are listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Don't forget to log on www.rainieravenue.world.
Welcome back on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Juan on Rainier. This is a live version today of Juan on Rainier. I'm sure that some of you will watch this recorded. We will get this out to you. And we had a lot of fun, Daniel and I, producing these shows. And we also want to let you know that later today here at Rainier Avenue Radio.world, you can tune into political coverage at 5 p.m. for the conversation with the Seattle Police Commission on police cameras we're going to talk about today. So that is going to be a very interesting conversation, and one that I know that people will get into. And then obviously we have been the community election connection here on your community radio station. So we call it politicking. This is what I call it. We people politicking around here. And obviously you've seen a number of the candidates forums and different things going on for these city-wide elections that have been coming on. Also a district election here. Eddie Lynn is taking on Adonis Duckworth. And so they've been here at Rainier Avenue Radio. We've done that, but we have more coming up all through the month of October. We talk about this every single election year. Number one, we hope to give you information to make sound decisions. Number two, go get yourself registered to vote. And as Councilmember Sawant has talked about, some of our listeners, some of you are a little younger, and maybe you haven't registered to vote yet. It is easy, it's simple, and if you don't register, you can't play. So please take the time to play. And then obviously, one last plug, Football Live Friday, 7 p.m. The Franklin Quakers, Coach Terry Green is taking on the West Seattle, I believe the Wildcats now, and that's going to be a lot of fun. And you get the kids out there playing a little football, and we tell the story of our kids here in West Seattle having a really, really good start to their season, 3-0, and Franklin. I know that Coach Green will have those guys fired up and ready to go out there against West Seattle. We're going to come back and we're going to talk to Councilmember Sawant. My dad always wanted me to be an attorney. we're going to Boys, so I want you to go to law school, Juan. And I know that the values of our families. My mother worked at the VA hospital for many years. She was very active, and she wanted me to do my best or whatever it was. And I think she was kind of leaving with my father. And I said, I'm not going to go to law school. I know a ton of attorneys, and I wanted to be a baseball player. And then got my master's degree in public policy, and and been able to build a career, and hopefully one that I'm proud of. Hopefully one that the family that I've developed is proud of, and hopefully my family. My father passed away. My mother's still alive. But I was wondering, growing up and coming from India, how does your family feel about this political stuff?
My family overall is very proud, I think, of the work we've done. My mother especially, I think, not only is she proud of the work we've done, she also agrees with many of the things. And she's very proud of the minimum wage victory and the Amazon tax that we won. And also, it's very important to her also that we are fighting against genocide. In fact, one of the things that I'm calling for in my congressional campaign against Adam Smith was, Adam Smith has funded the genocide to the tune of tens of billions of dollars. I'm fighting to end the genocide and also end all US military funding to the Israeli state. So I think my mother especially, but many of my family members, I think, identify with the need to urgently do something about it. And, we see this sentiment across the world. So I think that more and more people are understanding that this type of fight back is needed. And my family may not agree with me on everything, but I think in the 10-15 years, in the past 10-15 years, I think they've seen a lot of changes in their own thinking.
But your family would say, okay, we see this, it's okay to be a politician.
I don't think they see it as a politician, because I'm not a politician.
Right.
What they see is exactly what we do, which is fight for the working class, fight for the oppressed. In fact, one of the things that we won from through my office is the first and only ban on caste-based discrimination outside South Asia. And that was a historic victory for people of Indian origin, because the caste system, think of it like racism. It's really embedded in society and needs a real fight against it. And I don't think oppressions like caste or racism will be ended on the basis of capitalism, but it is important to fight and make progress, like ending the Jim Crow laws, the Civil Rights Act. All of that was important to fight back against racism. Similarly, all the progress that's been made against caste-based discrimination has been important. But what stands out about the law that we won in Seattle is that it's the only ban on caste discrimination that exists outside of South Asia. And a lot of Indians were really, they were electrified. That news went viral. And in fact, I remember my sister would send me screenshots of the newspaper articles that were appearing over and over again in India about our victory in Seattle in multiple languages, newspapers.
Councilmember Sawant, when you're in the Seattle City Council, when you're in any elected municipal position, the most and we can argue what is the most important in any community, but I think you would agree with me that the ability to keep the community safe is got to be one of, if not the most important priority. It's got to be right there at the top, certainly within the top 2 or 3. And I believe number 1. To do that, throughout the history of the United States, we've had a department called the police department, and there were some. Obviously, you have a different viewpoint of the police. It was clear that there was some, not only some conjecture between you and the police department. There were some legal issues and so forth, and you took some very firm stands against the police, including defunding the police. My question to you is this. Can you share with us what would be a better way to protect our communities? And you're right. My history. My father was an alcoholic. He threatened my mother one night. The police came. He was upset with me for calling the police. He threatened to kill me. And the police officer said, "You're not going to kill that young boy. That's a beautiful boy." And the police officers were very gentle. I've always had a decent relationship with police officers. Yet again, I know there are others that I grew up with in the same community, and whose parents maybe both weren't working, who were a little bit darker complexion. They had major run-ins with the police. So I understand both sides of it. My question to you is this: what is a better way that we can support our communities and protect our communities and keep them safe from the things that go on within our communities?
Yeah, first of all, I'm really sorry to hear what happened with you in your childhood, and that must have been extremely difficult. And I really feel solidarity with young people who have gone through these types of circumstances. It's very, very difficult. It's difficult at any age, but it's especially difficult when you're a child, and for your mother, all of that. And also the other thing you mentioned, legal issues. I mean, to be clear, it was a lawsuit that was filed by 2 police officers that they lost over and over. They kept bringing it back on appeal upon appeal, and they lost over and over again, which was because their lawsuit had no substance against me. It was a defamation lawsuit. So to be clear, they've lost. But as far as what is the better way, I really appreciate how you framed this question, Juan, because that is how we should be framing this question. Because the debate is not, are there individual police officers who may have done good? I don't doubt that that might be true. For us, the question should be systemic. You know, what do scientific studies show about the best ways and really the only ways of making sure public safety is ensured? And I think that is very important, especially for the working class, because who are the most vulnerable people who are the most vulnerable to crime and problems of public safety? It is the working class. I mean, I remember when we were running the campaign in 2013, our car was broken into, and it cost my husband and me, you know, we didn't have much money, over $2,000 just to fix it. And that was a lot of money for us. It was a lot of money for us. And I'll never forget the pinch that we felt for that. So that I'm sharing that example to say that this is actually a real issue for working class people. Studies show, though, and these are international studies, they show that the best way of improving public safety is to reduce inequality in our society, to reduce poverty, to make sure that the vast majority of people have access to infrastructure, high quality public schools, high quality healthcare, decent jobs for children, having after school programs, having groceries be affordable, having rent be affordable. So when you have the whole spectrum of what makes up a decent life, if that is affordable and accessible on a large scale, which can only be done through public services, that is when crime rates and go down and public safety flourishes. So if you look at the evidence from many nations, Western European nations, which they're also capitalist, but they have a far better situation in terms of inequality and poverty. They also have far fewer problems of public safety. So on the flip side, what do the data show? The data show that, and it's not just about Seattle, in most major cities, the funding for police departments has only gone up over the years, but the problems of public safety don't get solved. So in other words, it's about understanding scientifically what are the actual policies that will allow better public safety. And this is what the data shows. I mean, I'm just speaking as an economist, that the data shows that actually far better public schools, far better after school programs, far better public transit infrastructure, far cheaper, high quality housing, healthcare, all of that is going to be crucial in order to build a better society. And overall, when you build a better society, you have better public safety. And I should say in this context, it is very important that people speak out against Trump, the Trump administration attempts to get federal police in all these cities. You know, now we have it in Portland. I mean, this is a very, very dangerous development, and we can't hold our breath for the Democratic Party to fight against them, because they are not going to. In fact, it was under the Democratic President Biden last year that there were the worst attacks on peaceful anti-war protesters since the 1960s. Last year was the worst attacks on protest movements since the 1960s. So unfortunately, if you want real solutions to public safety, if you want real support for peaceful movements, all of this goes together. And for that, we need free healthcare for all, funded by taxing the rich, as I'm calling for in my congressional campaign, and also far better funding for all the things that I was talking about, which can only be funded by taxing the wealthy, the billionaires.
Tell us about taking on Adam Smith. How did that come about? Was that a decision that in the conversations you had with the socialist organization that you came up with? You were the one that was chosen to do that, going from the framework which you shared with us earlier. But tell us about Adam Smith, who I've known for quite some time. This is being a little bit of a Democratic operative myself. seems to be, and I mentioned this to Jonathan Roosevelt, he's more pragmatic. I mean, at least he listens, and he's been able to discuss things on both sides of the matter. And Jonathan said, "Juan, what does that pragmatism got us?" It was an interesting response. But my question to you is, what led to this decision, and tell us a bit about taking on a 27-year incumbent.
Yeah, 28-year incumbent, I think, at this point. Yeah, the process was exactly the same as you alluded to, one, which is that we had a democratic discussion and debate in my organization, Revolutionary Workers, and also Workers Strike Back. Workers Strike Back is a broader organization. We had a very wide-ranging discussion and debate inside Workers Strike Back nationally, and we discussed the importance of this kind of campaign. And the reason we launched this campaign is the similar reasoning, not the same, obviously, similar reasoning that we ran our first city council campaign in the first place, which is that the question that's in front of us is not, oh, should Kshama run for office and make her career? Because this is not, if I wanted to make a career, I could think of 100 different ways that would be easier for me. The question always is, what is the biggest breakthroughs we can fight for at this moment for the working class? And it has to be for the anti-war movement, because it's about the genocide as well. And what are the avenues available to us at this moment? And for us, it was a collective conclusion that the anti-war movement and also the movement of working class people needs a big breakthrough, because there is a chasm between the anger of working class Americans and their willingness to fight back, and the leadership that's on offer. There's a big chasm between the two, because unfortunately, the vast majority of the labor leadership, the NGO leadership, all of these so-called leaders are unfortunately tied at the hip to the Democratic Party establishment. Some of them, like Sean O'Brien, who's the president of the Teamsters, is actually making overtures to the Republicans and to Trump. That is even more disastrous. I mean, both these parties are a dead end for the working class. And so we recognize that launching this type of congressional campaign with a revolutionary socialist agenda, that is exactly what's needed both for working class movements and for the anti-war movement. And that is why we're running for Congress. Look at our opponent, Adam Smith. Adam Smith has been in office for 28 years. In fact, some of the campaign volunteers in my campaign have pointed out that that's longer than they've been alive, because we have a lot of young people volunteering with us. And he voted for the war on Iraq. He voted for the bailout of the big banks, both under Obama and under Bush, because it was a bipartisan project. He voted to create ICE. He has voted repeatedly to fund ICE. And he's not the only one. Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell have also done the same. I mean, this is the story of the rottenness of the Democratic Party. And so, yeah, he has voted to create ICE. He has voted to fund ICE. He also has, over his nearly 30-year career, he has also voted for, probably at this point, hundreds of billions of dollars for the Israeli state, for the occupation of Gaza and the West Bank. But especially more recently, he has voted for tens of billions of dollars for the genocide in Gaza. He also voted repeatedly to ban US funding for United Nations food aid to Gaza. And he did that. He voted to ban the funding for United Nations food aid after dozens of organizations, credible organizations, were reporting that the mass starvation had already reached catastrophic levels in Gaza, and it was reaching close to a famine. So this is the guy we're talking about. This guy, Adam Smith, has the blood on his hands of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. The Lancet study shows that more than 500,000 people are probably dead now because of the genocide. He has the blood on his hands of 1 million Iraqis. In my view, Adam Smith should be on trial for war crimes, but the minimum price he needs to pay is to be thrown out of office. But it's not just about him. It is about taking this fight to Washington, D.C. And I have pledged that if I am elected, I will turn my congressional inauguration into a mass rally of 10,000 people, and we will immediately bring a bill to end all U.S. military aid to the Israeli state, and also a bill for free healthcare for all funded by taxing the rich.
Councilmember Sawant, I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to try to defend Adam Smith. I'm sure that he's going to stand up and do that when you guys are in your forums and conversations you have starting next year. My question to you is this: is that of people who I've seen in politics, like yourself, I don't think you've ever backed away when someone's asked you a difficult question, and I don't think you sit back and formulate an answer in your brain. You give it. Adam Smith has always kind of stood up and done that. And in terms of the public process that we need, and sometimes we say in the community, don't hate the player, hate the game. Sometimes the game can be a little convoluted, but he also doesn't step back, and he really supports some of the decisions, and he doesn't run from them. Is there anything that he has supported that you just mentioned that you feel had to be supported by the Democratic Party, a stance that he had to take, or are you questioning the judgments that he's made based on his own volition to do it?
Well, if somebody has been in Congress for 30 years and has voted for war repeatedly and has never met a war he didn't like, has always voted for big business, has always been bankrolled by big business and the Zionist lobby, I don't think you're at a point where you can credibly claim that this person was maybe not doing it of his own volition, maybe he was innocent. No, Adam Smith was the chair of the House Armed Services Committee under which the funding for genocide happened. So he's not an innocent bystander, and he's not a newcomer, he's not a newbie, he's not a rookie in Congress. So I think any such idea that he is maybe this whole logic of don't hate the player, hate the game, that is flies in the face of facts right now, because he's been in Congress for nearly 30 years and he has been a warmongering Democrat. And I would say, bottom line, if genocide is not a line that we are refusing to cross, then there is no line, So once somebody has been an ardent advocate for the slaughter, the mass slaughter of innocent people, then everything else goes out the window. So I think 10, even 5 years from now, and even already, this position that maybe we should be defending Adam Smith or people like him, that is going to age like milk. Somebody wrote a book recently that said, one day everyone will always have been against genocide. That's what I mean. That these are the purveyors of war and genocide. They are not innocent bystanders, people like Adam Smith. And if you look at his entire track record, this is what he has done. And we have to push back against what I would call respectability politics, where, oh yeah, maybe you should just have a conversation with him, maybe you should just give him some leeway. No, I would prefer to think of the nearly 500,000 Palestinians who have been slaughtered. I would prefer to think of the fact that 80% of the people who were slaughtered in Gaza were women and children. I would prefer to think about the Palestinian people under siege. I would prefer to think about the working class people nationally who are suffering indignities on a daily basis because they can barely pay their rent or put food on the table. So our agenda is very clear. And like I said, it's not just about Adam Smith, it's about the Democratic Party as a whole. There is no mystery. The Democratic Party politicians, including Adam Smith, know exactly what they should have done. But the reason they won't do it is that they represent the interests of imperialism. So if you look at the major donors of Adam Smith in last year's election, who do you think his biggest donor was? It was AIPAC, the most notorious Zionist and pro-Israel and pro-genocide lobby that there is AIPAC. And that was his major donor. Who do you think his other donors were? It's big insurance companies, big pharma companies. It is weapons manufacturers like Palantir. These are companies, companies like Palantir are also companies that are getting tens of billions of dollars worth of contracts for the technology that they develop that is not only used against Palestinians, it is used right here in our nation, where they are used by ICE and in the horrific attacks on the immigrant community and really on all of us now in all our cities. If you look at his overall career, it's been anti-worker, it's been anti-working class as a whole. He, as I said, he also voted to break the railroad worker strike. So I'm just saying that it's not like oh, maybe he might be nice about this, maybe he might be nice about that. No, it's a very night and day situation here. It's a night and day difference between what he stands for and what I stand for. And what he stands for is not just his personal agenda, it is the agenda of the Democratic and Republican parties. That is why we're also running as an independent socialist. And that is why I would also urge everybody who's watching or listening to this, come to our rally on October 12th at 2 p.m. at the Langston Hughes Performing Arts Institute in the Central District. We're going to have a big rally for the campaign. Help us build this campaign. We have a chance to defeat an arch warmongering Democrat. We have a chance to elect a revolutionary socialist and really build a fight for an end to the wars and genocide, and also to win free healthcare for all.
You and I told you earlier, one of the things I have always admired, you are a straight shooter, and I appreciate you discussing the context of the police lawsuit situation, because that was very helpful for me. I want to in our days of public discourse right now, people have been talking about discourse on a variety of different levels, and for some of the situations that have occurred recently. My best friend from college is a Republican. He went to we went to Western Oregon together. Dave Ashcraft. I'm sure he'll watch this. I'm sure he'll have his opinion, and he will have his thoughts on this. But I always joke that he was Alex P. Keaton of that television show was on at the time. I was Axel Foley, Eddie Murphy's character in his movie, and we had a great relationship. We spent nights debating political issues. Councilmember, we would stay up all night and disagreed on so much, but I think we learned from each other. I think that we learned from each other. But a friendship developed. I remember at my child's funeral, I was going to cry in front of everybody. Here comes David down the aisle, just bawling, and I grabbed him and I said, "Hey, man, I can't have you crying like this, bro, because I'm not crying in front of these people. Will you stop it?" And he just looked at me and he said he loved me, and he put his face in my chest and just walked away. I have friends who are Republicans. I just want to say that, and I know, and I want you. Will you please put it into context? Because I think one time, and I've heard it. It's a comment that was been attributed to you. I have no friends that are Republicans. I was wondering. Certainly, the context of the media can take things way out of proportion. Would you care to elaborate on those types?
Sure.
of
Yeah. No, I have no
Please.
problem.
Right.
Problem explaining. And in fact, one of my closest friends in graduate school was a Republican, and I still love her.
Yes.
But the distinction that I make, and which is what was blurred in that media story, if I remember correctly, was what I was trying to say was that I am not friends with any Republican or, for that matter, Democratic power brokers, because I don't. They are the class enemies of the working class, and my responsibility is to not blur that line. I have a very important responsibility on my shoulders that I never sell out. I never sell out working class people. I take that responsibility very seriously. It's not a personal issue. It is political. That if we have leaders who sell us out, then what is left? So I take that responsibility very seriously. But as far as ordinary people are concerned, that's a completely different issue. In fact, what happens under this whole situation of capitalism, and then they're both the parties that represent the capitalist class, they create this illusion of division between among working class people, that you're supposed to, if you're a Democratic Party voter, you should hate a Republican Party voter, and so on and so forth. In fact, what I'm trying to say is the exact opposite, which is that if you are an ordinary working class person, then actually you have far more in common with somebody who may not agree with you on some things ideologically than you do with a billionaire or a multimillionaire. That's the reality of capitalism. And in fact, our approach, a revolutionary socialist approach, is actually, that's the one that's successful in uniting working class people on a common cause. But where I draw the line is where the people who have the power to make a difference, who misuse that power and then sell out working class people. So if I want to rephrase that sentence, I would say I'm not friends with any Republican or Democratic Party politicians or power brokers, but I absolutely want to build links with ordinary people who may vote Republican, but who may agree with some of the things we say. I mean, just to give you a concrete example, we got a donation recently, just a few weeks ago, for our congressional campaign from a guy who said that he does not agree with us on some of the social issues, but he is all in with us on the fight for the working class, and he said, that is why I'm sending you money, because I'm all in with you on ending the genocide in Gaza. I'm all in on with you. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, on the fight for working class people, and that's why I'm joining you. In fact, it is socialists who have an actual understanding of what capitalism looks like. Those are the ones who can make inroads between white and black workers, between people who might vote for others. And that is why what we have said repeatedly is that I don't give a shit whom you voted for last year. If you want to fight for free healthcare for all funded by taxing the rich, if you want to end the genocide, if you want to end US military aid for the Israeli state, then join us.
I'm going to steal a minute from Tony, okay? What can we do to have more civil conversation in our country? I believe we've got to pull this back, and I have had conversations. My family members in Virginia are extremely conservative. I used to call them intellectual conservatives. I call them Trump conservatives now. And but the bottom line is this: we're civil, and we can have conversations. We don't kick each other out of the food line. We eat together. We raise our children together. We build our families together. What can we do to continue to have?
I think, look, I'll be honest. I think ordinary people are civil. I mean, most of the people I talk to who disagree with us, at the family Thanksgiving table or anywhere else, are civil. You know where the civility is lacking is when the Biden administration or the Trump administration goes and attacks anti-war protesters. Like I said, last year was the worst treatment of anti-war protesters, of protest movements in general, since the 1960s. If you look at the number of students in Columbia University, CUNY, other universities who have been facing arrests, suspensions, expulsions, for why? For what? For having the courage to protest against the genocide. That is not civil. So if you want to talk about civility, we have to talk about the actual problems where you don't see civility. Well, you know what is not civil? We're keeping tens of millions of working class people in such precarious economic conditions that they are barely able to feed their families, that they don't have what they need for their children. You know what is not civil? When housing is so unaffordable, when schooling is so unaffordable, that you have children who are homeless. That's not civil. You know what's not civil? The slaughter of the Palestinians in Gaza, the ethnic cleansing that is going on in Gaza and the West Bank. That is not civil. And that is the lack of civility that I am preoccupied with.
I told M, and I told you when you walked in here, 227 sessions isn't enough. I wish we had 3 hours. Wish I had 4 hours to talk to you. I appreciate you coming on here. He is Councilmember Kshama Sawant. One more plug for We Are Coming For You and Your Rotten Cookies, Jonathan Rosenblum's book. But we want to thank Councilmember Sawant for coming and spending some time with us on Rainier Avenue Radio. And I'm going to beg M to get you on here again. I would love to do that.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to.
Thank you so much for your participation. We hope you enjoyed this. Hope you enjoyed the conversations. Remember, we at Rainier Avenue Radio are your community election connection.